traitor. Evil stirs in this place. I fear for the security of the very land if it should break free. We stand at the tomb of Hednorak, who has been dead for many generations. I fear, however, that his return may be at hand. I have been holding him here. While he regains strength, however, I am fading. By now, I can barely contain his power, much less defeat him if he awakens. But with the help of a living champion, I may be able to succeed. You would do this? 3 vessels in the tomb below hold the power to vanquish Hednorak. Before anything else, we need those. Bring them to me, but be careful, mortal. They are guarded by Hednorak's minions. They will stop at nothing to see their master return.
That was close. The people at Ballets are very protective, as they ought to be, by the way, of George Carlin, and so getting through to him was, man, it was really close, like within seconds here, but I think that we have done it. So coming up in a moment, the big C, George Carlin. Well, normally I read some sort of bio on my guest, but if you don't know who George Carlin is, then what can I tell you? Everybody knows who George Carlin is. And he just finished a show at Ballets, so here he is, George Carlin. Hi, George.
Hello, Art. How are you?
Quite well, thank you.
I do cut it kind of closely on your show.
Oh, man, I'll tell you. I called Ballets, and they are very protective of you, George. I got a lady who said, well, I can't do that. Let me get my supervisor. And
really?
So, yeah, they should get a supervisor. And they, well, we don't know if we can do that. We'll have to screen that call.
Oh, yeah.
Then I finally got through.
Well, they screen out folks, except for folks like you, Art. Folks like you can always get through. By the way, that reversing the aging, 10 years, 10 weeks.
Yeah.
How about if I'm 62, which is 17 Celsius. How about if I take that stuff for 63 weeks? Will I be a fetus?
You might be. I've often thought that that it's all backwards, that we should not get older and more decrepit, going slowly away, but it should be reversed.
Would it be great if you just wound up, well, actually you kind of do go downhill again anyway, some of us, you know?
Well, you do, but it's not as though you're being enlightened more.
No.
You might stare at a flower, but you don't get the same thing out of it a child would. And
concerning the 5 to 10 pounds of toxic matter in my intestinal tract,
we all have that.
Yeah, well, I have over 60 pounds in my tract. And I have some more in my pockets.
Are you a meat eater?
No, sir. I will eat some breast of chicken meat, turkey kind of things, and occasional fish.
Because they tell me that beef eaters have like 5 or 10 pounds or 20 pounds of beef, undigested beef.
Yeah.
It's an ugly thought.
And their bodies smell like it. I don't mean to be disgusting. I just mean that they have a kind of a body odor that's really, I think, more noticeable.
Beefy.
Yes.
Why do you do what you do?
Well, some of it is genetic, and I have instincts and skills, or some people call them gifts when they talk about their own talents. I think of them as skills. My mother and father were both very funny people conversationally. My dad was an after-dinner speaker. I didn't know him. He was asked to leave early. He apparently couldn't metabolize ethanol very well.
So
he was shown the door early.
I see.
But they were both very funny. My mother, who I did have in my life as a youngster, my mother could come home from work riding the bus in New York City, and she could tell you a story that something happened on the bus, and she could do 3 or 4 voices of the people, and she'd improve everything they said, and she'd always have a punchline, a great punchline. So there's a genetic strain, and particularly I think the Irish have a gift of that, and so I have pretty much I couldn't help it. I found that it got me a lot of attention and approval as a youngster. I lived kind of a lonesome life, which I enjoyed, but
what about school? I mean, were you like that in school? Because that gets you in a lot of trouble.
Oh, sure. I was a class clown.
Yeah.
As they say, and in fact, I had an album by that title at one time that did very well for me. And my attitude in school was that as long as I wasn't going to get an education, why should these other children get one?
I don't know if that was my attitude, but I did that too. I constantly asked irrelevant questions.
Oh, yes. Or in my case, a Catholic school, pointed questions.
Pointed questions.
If God is so powerful, can he make a rock that he himself can't lift? They used to love me.
Yeah, that's a terrible question. There's another one you asked, something about if God were to take acid, would he see people?
Wow, that's nice. I love switches like that. Simple humor switches. I never thought of that one.
No?
No, that wasn't mine.
I wonder if he would, though.
He'd probably see only the finest people.
You talk a lot about God. Do you really believe in God?
No, I don't.
No?
I talk about him as an object in our culture.
You don't think there's a God?
I can't believe that there's a man in the sky keeping score who watches everything we do and has a little scorecard. It just seems... There might be a kind of an organizing intelligence. Somehow the universe seems to have an order to it, but I don't know that it's a judgmental or one that really gives a crap.
Not supposed to. Yeah, the fear God thing. I don't buy into that.
Oh my! Well, I mean, I think it's very limiting. I think the belief in God is a form of mental illness. It's a very limiting form of the intellect, the wonderful intellect that nature has given us. I use the word nature. Has given us is compromised by surrendering things to the will of God. You know, that we don't have any say. Well, it didn't happen. My prayer didn't come true. It must be God's will, and that relieves you of responsibility. I don't believe that.
But you think there is something. In other words, there is some sort of order, and that means there has to be something, right?
Well, I wouldn't say I think it. I'd say it would not surprise me. I'm a questioner, and I'm in some ways credulous, too. And it just seems, though, as if that there is a kind of order that we can't explain that is beyond our ken. How can we ever expect, as this lowly clay that rose to this level, to understand something that beyond? I'd rather just stand here and wonder and not try to put a name on it.
Do you wonder about after you die? Whether there will be anything or nothing?
Well, I do wonder about that. And I also wonder why there isn't just nothing now. Why are there things at all? Why do we have matter? Why is there anything? I used to sit in school. That was one of the things that got me in trouble in school, sitting there daydreaming.
But that goes back to God, see?
Yeah. Well, it can. It can. It's a wonderful thing that we have these minds and we can consider these things, this stuff, but it can drive you a little crazy, Art.
There's a gazillion things I could think to ask you about today. The president came out today and said that Y2K is not going to be a problem. And then his own committee said that half of the 911 systems in the U.S. are not compliant. And the president said, our savings and our safety are intact. No problem.
Well, the 911 thing is great because that's where the guns are. You know, those are the people with the guns that they're trying to corral, and people who get shot and hurt.
That's right.
I root for big problems all the time. I root for disasters. I root actually for the end of all of this because I think it's an interesting scenario for things to wind down. I think we're already circling the drain as a species, and I love to see the circles get a little faster and a little shorter.
So you're rooting for disasters?
I do, sort of, just for my entertainment. It's a very selfish thing, but I sort of root that. I love an earthquake. I love a bigger earthquake. They're never as big as I'd like.
Have you ever been in one?
Yeah, well, they're not very big. I was in two of those California ones. The one in the early '70s. And then the one that we had here, I don't know what, 10 years ago, 8, something.
Well, you're just over the hill in Las Vegas. Let me tell you, we had a pretty damn good one, 7 point whatever it was, just 3 weeks ago, whatever.
We need a 25. I think of it as an amusement park. Wonderful thing to realize you have absolutely no control. And to see the dresser move across the bedroom floor unassisted, to me, it's a very exciting thing. And I'll tell you the truth, I never got scared in either quake I was in. I did cover my wife with my body, kind of an instinctive thing. I rolled over in the bed and kind of covered her. I thought the ceiling might fall in or something.
Huh.
And our daughter ran in. Kelly ran in when this was the one in the early 70s. She was about 9 or 10. But I honestly felt, disappointed when it was over, that it wasn't bigger. And I looked out and there wasn't enough destruction. I really think there's great human drama in destruction and in nature unleashed, and I don't get enough of it.
George, a 25 would turn entire continents over.
Now you're talking, Art. You know what we never have either is a really good big tidal wave. Can you imagine the tsunami we would have out of a 25?
Oh, yeah. There would be nothing left.
I know. It's just wonderful to consider.
Well, there are scientists, by the way, who do consider that every now and then there is a complete extinction. Everything goes.
Yep.
And everything begins again.
Well, if you're talking about 65 million years ago with the reptiles and all,
that'd be one.
That's certainly a possible random achievement that we could attain, to have one of those fellas hit us. And I read once, by the way, I was very disappointed that the bolide didn't hit on June 30th. I want you to know I listen as often as I can, Art. It's not regular, but it's probably 2 or 3 times a month.
So you were hoping for it?
I was hoping that the bolide would be on time, and then I was hoping when it didn't show up on June 30th that at least Nostradamus would be correct with July 6th, and then that didn't happen, and I wondered what Father Charlie Moore was going to tell the people, because he was quite,
specific, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was, yeah.
But I would like to see, and I want it to happen a little east of me so that the prevailing winds carry the destruction around a little bit late, and I can watch some of it on CNN. I want to see the cities go out one at a time, London, Moscow, Tokyo, and then catch up to me. I'm having a little fun with this, but I honestly must tell you that I do enjoy big disasters. I really, and I always hope, that they're going to be a little bit bigger.
It's incredible. Well, the only reason for that could be that you've more or less given up on the human race.
Well, the problem is when you scratch a cynic, you find a disappointed idealist underneath. And I will cop out to that. I'm sure there's some flame burning dimly in me that would like to see everything work. But it doesn't look like that is what is in the cards. If we had another maybe 1,000 or 10,000 years to evolve, and we got past this stuff of national borders with 168 countries or whatever it is, and 2,000 or 5,000 languages or whatever it is, and all of these rivalries, we could have a chance.
Now, you see, I had callers just before you came on who were talking about this. They're in great fear of it. They talk about the New World Order. They're talking about UN troops coming in and taking over the U.S. and the world and all of that.
Well, you know something? When you're stuck in local time, that is when your mind, your thoughts, your parameters are stuck in local time, you see things on a small level, on a limited basis. But I think that if there is ever to be a golden age of this species, a true golden age, it will not include borders in 168 countries and 2,000 or 5,000 languages, whatever the real count is these days. It will not include those things. This is a very young, primitive species. The fact that our technology has raced eons ahead of us is interesting, and it gives us a lot of toys and things, but we're still very close to who we were 10,000 years ago. It's a drop in the bucket of time.
So, in other words, you look at current social behavior, and it's not that much above caveman level.
Well, I think the veneer is very thin. I mean, I think there's...
So do I.
Yeah, barbarism is less than a generation away. I really think that. I don't mean it's coming. I mean, under certain circumstances, it could be less than a generation away.
The Mad Max thing.
Yeah, yes, the roving bands of maniacs, I call them. The various roving bands of maniacs. There'll be all different kinds. There'll be the ones that got out of the insane asylums, the ones that got out of the prisons. Then there'll be my people, the Scotch-Irish, who'll be wandering across the land looking for things to drink, and your sister. They want to find your sister.
Your sister.
There'll be all manner of people running around.
Well, it could happen.
Yeah.
Incidentally, let me just move you a little bit. You're in Las Vegas right now.
Yes, sir.
I've lived in and around Las Vegas for the last, 15 years.
Right.
It has really changed. Every time somebody gets a bug, they blow up a building and put up a new one.
Yes.
What do you think of Las Vegas now?
Well, I'm kind of separate from this culture here. The one good thing, and I'll get back to the basic part of your question. The one good thing these days here is that there are really a lot of first-class restaurants now. There might be 20 to 30 restaurants where you can really count on the food. But this is what it shows itself to be. I work in theaters primarily. I do about 100 or 120 theaters and concert halls a year. Most of them are about 2,500 seaters, and that is my general career along with my HBO shows. And I come here about 10 or 12 weeks a year to give a little rest to those markets that I'm usually going to Seattle and Miami and Pittsburgh. And you have to rest them a little bit. You can't be going back every year. So I get down. I can earn a little money here, and I can stay in one place for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. I don't have to pack every day. I can write. I can,
sure.
Yeah. So that's my reason for being here. But and that's the only reason I can tolerate it, because it does something for me. It's tit for tat. I'm not a schmoozer. I'm not a hangout guy. I never hung out with show business people. I don't know many of them. I don't have a lot of industry friends. I have a small circle of friends. Most of them are unrelated to show business. So here I'm a kind of alien. There's a topic for us.
Yeah.
I'm a kind of alien, and I...
Do you find you withdraw more and more and more?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a function of age or intellect. All of our intellect, it is to be hoped, sharpened a little bit with age, and we get our perceptions a little clearer and what it is we need from the world clearer. But in my case, I can say it's happened that way. And I find that I'm in love now with a woman. I'm engaged to a woman, Sally, who, well, let me put it this way. Let me bring you back just a few years. I had a wonderful marriage with my wife, Brenda, for 35, 36 years. We were together about 37 years. And Brenda died about 2 years ago. And now I've fallen in love with Sally, and we are kind of separate from the world. We have our own little circle of it's like about 3 people.
Yeah.
And I love that. I really don't like the entanglements, because a lot of people are just, they drag you down with their agendas and their things that are on their minds and what they're concerned with. They seem to have a lot of frivolous things they care about, and I don't care for all that worldly stuff.
I know. Well, there's a problem with celebrity, and I've had a real problem dealing with that, George.
Sure.
You never really exactly know why people want to be your friend, and unfortunately, a lot of times it has to do with your celebrity, and so it's tough. It's really tough.
Well, unfortunately, that circle of my radar is very acute, and there aren't many people who get past that circle who, if they're just really trying to suck up or be sycophantic or look for something, I mean, that they don't even get past the first ring. But there are people who you can tell the difference between a genuine compliment.
You can.
And an artificial one.
Still,
yes.
There is a big price to pay.
Sure.
For being famous, isn't there?
There is, and at the same time, may I point out, because I'm a pretty positive with all that stuff I said about disasters and the end of the world.
Well, hold on to the positive part. We'll get to that right after the break. Bigger the disaster, the better. Hoping for a 25. What a 25 earthquake would be? It would be. Well, there would be no America. Europe, Japan, the Orient, all gone. African continent. Everything would go underwater. You wouldn't be watching anything on CNN. Nothing. Because they wouldn't be there. Because there'd be no Atlanta. George Carlin is here.
I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms or euphemistic language. And American English is loaded with euphemisms because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. And it gets worse with every generation. For some reason, it just keeps getting worse. I'll give you an example of that. There's a condition in combat Most people know about it. It's when a fighting person's nervous system has been stressed to its absolute peak and maximum, can't take any more input. The nervous system has either snapped or is about to snap. In the First World War, that condition was called shell shock. Simple, honest, direct language. 2 syllables. Shell shock. Almost sounds like the guns themselves. That was 70 years ago. Then a whole generation went by, and the Second World War came along, and the very same combat condition was called battle fatigue. 4 syllables now. Takes a little longer to say. Doesn't seem to hurt as much. Fatigue is a nicer word than shock. Shell shock. Battle fatigue. Then we had the war in Korea, 1950. Madison Avenue was riding high by that time, and the very same combat condition was called operational exhaustion. Hey, we're up to 8 syllables now. And the humanity has been squeezed completely out of the phrase. It's totally sterile now. Operational exhaustion. Sounds like something that might happen to your car. Then, of course, came the war in Vietnam, which has only been over for about 16 or 17 years. And thanks to the lies and deceit surrounding that war, I guess it's no surprise that the very same condition was called post-traumatic stress disorder. Still 8 syllables, but we've added a hyphen. And the pain is completely buried under jargon. Post-traumatic stress disorder. I'll bet you if we'd have still been calling it shell shock, some of those Vietnam veterans might have gotten the attention they needed at the time. I'll bet you that. I'll bet you that. But it didn't happen. And one of the reasons is because we were using that soft language, that language that takes the life out of life. And it is a function of time. It does keep getting worse. Give you another example. Sometime during my life, toilet paper became bathroom tissue. I wasn't notified of this. No one asked me if I agreed with it. It just happened. Toilet paper became bathroom tissue. Sneakers became running shoes. False teeth became dental appliances. Medicine became medication. Information became directory assistance. The dump became the landfill. Car crashes became automobile accidents. Partly cloudy became partly sunny. Motels became motor lodges. House trailers became mobile homes. Used cars became previously owned transportation. Room service became guest room dining. And constipation became occasional irregularity. When I was a little kid, if I got sick, they wanted me to go to the hospital and see the doctor. Now they want me to go to a health maintenance organization or a wellness center to consult a healthcare delivery professional. Poor people used to live in slums. Now the economically disadvantaged occupy substandard housing in the inner cities. And they're broke. They're broke. They don't have a negative cash flow position. They're fucking broke. Because a lot of them were fired. You know, fired. Management wanted to curtail redundancies in the human resources area. So many people are no longer viable members of the workforce. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. Or they depopulate the area. The government doesn't lie. It engages in disinformation. The Pentagon actually measures nuclear radiation in something they call sunshine units. Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? They never mention that part of it to us, do they? Never mention that part of it. And some of this stuff is just silly. We all know that. Like on the airlines, they say they want a pre-board. Well, what the hell is pre-board? What does that mean? To get on before you get on? They say they're going to pre-board those passengers in need of special assistance. Cripples! Simple, honest, direct language. There's no shame attached to the word cripple that I can find in any dictionary. No shame attached to it. In fact, it's a word used in Bible translations. Jesus healed the cripples. Doesn't take 7 words to describe that condition. But we don't have any cripples in this country anymore. We have the physically challenged. Is that a grotesque enough evasion for you? How about differently abled? I've heard them called that, differently abled. You can't even call these people handicapped anymore. They'll say, we're not handicapped, we're handy-capable. These poor people have been bullshitted by the system into believing that if you change the name of the condition, somehow you'll change the condition. Well, hey, cousin, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. We have no more deaf people in this country, hearing impaired. No one's blind anymore, partially sighted or visually impaired. We have no more stupid people. Everybody has a learning disorder. Or he's minimally exceptional. How would you like to be told that about your child? He's minimally exceptional. Oh, thank God for that. Psychologists actually have started calling ugly people those with severe appearance deficits. It's getting so bad that any day now I expect to hear a rape victim referred to as an unwilling sperm recipient. And we have no more old people in this country. No more old people. We shipped them all away, and we brought in these senior citizens. Isn't that a typically American 20th century phrase? Bloodless, lifeless. No pulse in one of them. A senior citizen. But I've accepted that one. I've come to terms with it. I know it's here to stay. We'll never get rid of it. That's what they're going to be called, so I'll relax on that. But the one I do resist, the one I keep resisting, is when they look at an old guy and they'll say, look at him, Dan. He's 90 years young. Imagine the fear of aging that reveals. To not even be able to use the word old to describe someone, to have to use an antonym. And fear of aging is natural, it's universal, isn't it? We all have that. No one wants to get old, no one wants to die, but we do. So we bullshit ourselves. I started bullshitting myself when I got to my 40s. As soon as I was in my 40s, I'd look in the mirror and I'd say, well, I guess I'm getting older. Older sounds a little better than old, doesn't it? Sounds like it might even last a little longer. Bullshit, I'm getting old. And it's okay, because thanks to our fear of death in this country, I won't have to die. I'll pass away. Or I'll expire like a magazine subscription. If it happens in the hospital, they'll call it a terminal episode. The insurance company will refer to it as negative patient care outcome. And if it's the result of malpractice, they'll say it was a therapeutic misadventure. I'm telling you, some of this language makes me want to vomit. Well, maybe not vomit. Makes me want to engage in an involuntary personal protein spill. Thank you all.
Something else I don't understand, motivation tapes, motivation books. What happened here? Suddenly everybody needs to be motivated? It's a fairly simple thing. Either you want to do something or you don't. What's the big mystery? Besides, if you're motivated enough to go to the store to buy a motivation book, aren't you motivated enough to do that? So you don't need the book. Put it back. Tell the clerk, fuck you, I'm motivated, I'm going home. I'm going home. And can anyone explain to me the need for 1 hour photo finishing? You just saw the fucking thing. How can you possibly be nostalgic about a concept like a little while ago? Another complaint, too many vehicles. There are some families in this country own entirely too many vehicles. You see them on the highway in an RV. But that's not enough for them. RV's not enough. Behind them, they're towing a motorboat, go-kart, dune buggy, dirt bike, jet ski, snowmobile, parasail, hang glider, windsurfing equipment, a hot air balloon, and a small two-man deep-sea diving bell. Doesn't anyone just take a fucking walk anymore? The only thing these people lack is a lunar excursion module. Too many choices, America. It's not healthy. Another abomination. White guys over 10 years of age who wear their baseball hats backwards. Listen. Listen to me. White guys, let me tell you something. You're never going to be as cool as black guys. It's not going to happen. You're white and you're lame. It's a fucking law of nature. Turning your hat around and learning a complicated handshake will not make you cool. And you black guys, since you started the whole thing, I'm going to let you stay with the hats a little bit longer, but I think really, once you qualify for Social Security, it's time to spin that motherfucker around to the front again. All right? Another tip for the men. The earrings, the thing with the earrings, it's over. Been over for a long time. Doesn't mean anything anymore. It was supposed to piss off the squares. The squares are wearing them now. Doesn't mean anything. It's just fucking jewelry. Unless you have an earring with a live baby hanging from it. It's just jewelry. And I want you to know I'm in favor of self-mutilation and personal disfigurement. I've always said there's nothing like puncturing and perforating your skin in a dozen or so places in order to demonstrate your high self-esteem. When I see a young man decorating his scalp with a soldering iron, I say, there's a happy guy. Thinks highly of himself. And haven't we gone a little overboard with these colored ribbons for different causes? Every cause has its own colored ribbon now. Red for AIDS, blue for child abuse, pink for breast cancer, green for the rainforest, purple for urban violence. I got a brown one. You know what it means? Eat shit, motherfucker! Eat shit, motherfucker! And what can we do to silence these Christian athletes who thank Jesus whenever they win, never mention his name when they lose? Not a word. You never hear him say, Jesus made me drop the ball. The good Lord tripped me up behind the line of scrimmage. According to these guys, Jesus is undefeated. Meanwhile, these assholes are in last place. Must be another one of those miracles. And speaking of delusional people, what about a guy who hears a voice in his head tells him to kill his entire family, so he does it? Is this the only thing a voice in the head ever tells these people to do is to kill others? Doesn't a voice ever tell a guy, go take a shit on the salad bar at Wendy's? Doesn't a voice tell a guy to take out his dick on the merry-go-round once in a while? Well, some guys do take out their dicks on the merry-go-round, but usually it's their own idea. Something else I can do without, aftershave and cologne. And this disgusting shit that men put on their bodies. Just what I need in the elevator. Some guy standing next to me smells like a fucking pine tree. I said, go home and wash, you smelly prick. You smell like the urinal in a Portuguese cat house. God damn, guys are stupid. Guys are really fucking dumb. They think they're going to get laid with this stuff, you know. Oh, yeah, they put it on at home. Oh, boy, I'll get laid tonight. You don't get laid with green shit that comes out of a bottle, okay? And the only smell that's going to help you get laid might be your own natural scent. You have pheromones. It's a secondary sex characteristic. People in America, nervous about sex. They want to cover that up and disguise it. Guys in Europe, they know how to live. Guy gets in the elevator over there, he smells like a pile of dog shit. Those people are sophisticated. Getting pretty tired of these guys walking around in cowboy hats and cowboy boots. You ever see these jack-offs? Can't we kill some of these motherfuckers walking around in a fucking cowboy hat? Grown man. It's not even Halloween, for Christ's sakes. I say, hey, Tex, grow up and get yourself a wardrobe consistent with the century you're living in. Why do certain men feel the need to dress up as mythic figures? You don't see anyone walking around in a pirate costume, do you? When's the last guy you ran into had on a Viking outfit? Make-believe cowboys. Closest they ever got to a cow is when they stopped to take a piss at an Arby's. and camcorders. Here is technology gone berserk. Everywhere you go now, there's some dick, some yo-yo, some putz with a camcorder, and he is going to tape everything. Doesn't anyone in this country just stop and look at things anymore? Sort of take them in? Maybe even remember them? Is that just a strange notion? Does experience have to be documented and brought home and saved on a shelf? And do people really watch this shit? Are people's lives so bankrupt they sit at home looking at things they already did? And these guys are so intense, you know. It's always guys. They won't let women touch the cameras. It's a highly technical skill. Look through a hole, push on a button, big skill. And they all think they're Federico Fellini. Ever seen any of this shit? Low angles, zooms, and pans, and it's the same ugly 3 children in every goddamn shot. All the George Lucas magic in Hollywood is not going to change the unfortunate genetic configuration on the faces of these children. Keep these unfortunate youngsters out of public view. Now, a lot of these, hold on a sec. A lot of these cultural crimes I've been complaining about can be blamed on the baby boomers. Something else I'm a little tired of hearing about. The baby boomers. Whiny, narcissistic, self-indulgent people with a simple philosophy. Give me it, it's mine! Give me that, it's mine! These people were given everything. Everything was handed to them. And they took it all. Took it all. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And they stayed loaded for 20 years and had a free ride. But now they're staring down the barrel of middle-age burnout. And they don't like it. They don't like it, so they've turned self-righteous. And they want to make things hard on younger people. They tell them abstain from sex, say no to drugs. As for the rock and roll, they sold that for television commercials a long time ago. So they could buy pasta machines and Stairmasters and soybean futures. Soybean futures. You know something? They're cold, bloodless people. It's in their slogans, it's in their rhetoric. No pain, no gain. Just do it. Life is short, play hard. Shit happens, deal with it. Get a life. These people went from do your own thing to just say no. They went from love is all you need to whoever winds up with the most toys wins. And they went from cocaine to Rogaine. And you know something? They're still counting grams, only now it's fat grams. And the worst of it is the rest of us have to watch these commercials on TV for Levi's loose-fitting jeans and fat-ass Docker pants. Because these degenerate, yuppie, boomer cocksuckers couldn't keep their hands off the croissants and the Haagen-Dazs. And their big fat asses have spread all over and they have to wear fat-ass Docker pants. Fuck these boomers, fuck these yuppies. And fuck everybody, now that I think of it. Well, sometimes in comedy you have to generalize. Now, there's one thing you might have noticed I don't complain about. Politicians. Everybody complains about politicians. Everybody says they suck. Well, where do people think these politicians come from? They don't fall out of the sky. They don't pass through a membrane from another reality. They come from American parents and American families, American homes, American schools, American churches, American businesses, and American universities, and they're elected by American citizens. This is the best we can do, folks. This is what we have to offer. It's what our system produces. Garbage in, garbage out. If you have selfish, ignorant citizens, you're going to get selfish, ignorant leaders. And term limits ain't going to do you any good. You're just going to wind up with a brand new bunch of selfish, ignorant Americans. So maybe it's not the politicians who suck. Maybe something else sucks around here. Like the public. Yeah, the public sucks. There's a nice campaign slogan for somebody. The public sucks. Fuck hope. Fuck hope. Because if it's really just the fault of these politicians, then where are all the other bright people of conscience? Where are all the bright, honest, intelligent Americans ready to step in and save the nation and lead the way? We don't have people like that in this country. Everybody's at the mall, scratching his ass, picking his nose, taking his credit card out of his fanny pack and buying a pair of sneakers with lights in them. So I have solved this little political dilemma for myself in a very simple way. On Election Day, I stay home. I don't vote. Fuck them. Fuck them. I don't vote. Two reasons I don't vote. First of all, it's meaningless. This country was bought and sold and paid for a long time ago. The shit they shuffle around every 4 years doesn't mean a fucking thing. And secondly, I don't vote because I believe if you vote, you have no right to complain. People like to twist that around, I know. They say, well, if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. But where's the logic in that? If you vote, and you elect dishonest, incompetent people, and they get into office and screw everything up, well, you are responsible for what they have done. You caused the problem. You voted them in. You have no right to complain. I, on the other hand, who did not vote, who, in fact, did not even leave the house on Election Day, am in no way responsible for what these people have done and have every right to complain as loud as I want about the mess you created that I had nothing to do with. So I know that a little later on this year you're going to have another one of those really swell presidential elections that you like so much. You'll enjoy yourselves. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm sure as soon as the election is over, your country will improve immediately. As for me, I'll be home on that day doing essentially the same thing as you. The only difference is when I get finished masturbating, I'm going to have a little something to show for it, folks. Thank you very much. Thank
you. Once again, here is George Carlin. Actually, I've always read disaster books, gone to disaster movies, and I think most people, even though they don't admit it, are just like George. The bigger the disaster, the better.
You know it.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people are like that. They don't admit it.
No, there are a lot of things like that they don't admit. But I understand that. They think they have to live up to something.
Anyway, you do have some positive outlook about something, right?
Now, you know, you're right, but I can't remember what I was segueing from. What was the last negative thing we were on that the reason I said it was a positive thought? But because I can make something up.
If you've lost it, it couldn't have been too profound.
Well, it was a profound connection, but I lost the connection. I think.
Well, we'll see if we can get back to it. I note on your HBO specials that you do a lot of politics.
Well, I call them social issues rather than because politics to me means Democrat, Republican, and I don't do much of that.
No.
You know, I don't do a lot of topical stuff, but I do things that are timely. You know, race and love and war and hate and those kind of things. But it's not partisan. I don't talk about, specific people.
Speaking of war, there's a big headline today that the U.S. Army, two of our divisions, and we only have 10, are not prepared should there be a war.
Well, good. It'll be more fun. I just wish I could think of that connection. Damn, I'm mad at myself.
Well, that's all right. It'll come back to you.
Yeah, but
in the meantime, there's plenty of negative things we can cover.
Absolutely. But I think, let me just try and make a pass at the positive thing, because I wanted to say this much. I don't believe very much in groups. I don't like what I call the clotting of human beings.
Yeah.
I really love individuals. As I meet them one at a time, even a kind of an inane person or someone who's kind of goofy or is even kind of bad news, there's something interesting. Like a guy who just raped his dog is at least interesting. You look in his eyes and you kind of see something there. But it's the groups. It's when they begin to surrender the beauty of the human individual mind to a group mind and group thought. Suddenly they start having little hats and little sayings and passwords. And they have a list of things they're going to do, and they have fight songs and team jackets and things. And I think they lose the beauty of individual humanity, which I believe in. I think we're a magnificent species.
Are you not, though, somewhat in contradiction with yourself, though? Because you earlier said that until we erase the borders,
Yes.
the nationalism, all the rest of it, well, once you've done all that, you've got a bunch of people that are holding hands and, talking about love, and that's it.
Well, maybe not. Maybe we're destined to do that. I mean, I can't sketch out the exact outcome that I would like. What I would love to see is that we get beyond these things that limit the human mind now. I think we put restrictions on ourselves with these boundaries, not just political boundaries, but intellectual boundaries. I would love to see a completely anarchistic human race where everybody really gets to pursue everything they would like to. I don't know how that would ever work. We might need 10 million years. I don't think it's in the cards. I think we're a cursed species. I think we're a chemical accident, and I don't think there's any hope for us. The other thing, the other part of me, is just a wish part. That's just, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be great? I don't believe it really can happen.
A chemical accident. We crawled, in other words, way back when, out of some mud puddle or the ocean to become what we are now.
Some catalytic agent took the ingredients and put them together, and it's probably happened in a million or 10 million or 10 billion other places in the universe. And it's all just an accident. The interesting thing.
Well, but if man evolved from monkeys and apes,
yes,
then why do we still have monkeys and apes?
You see, you got the good questions, Art, and I got the bad answers.
I mean, that really is a good question. If it was if things evolved.
But they evolved to the left and to the right, not always in a straight line. I mean, there are branches. Obviously, there are 400 different. I don't know how many species of mammals. And they all came after the reptiles were destroyed by this presumed comet or asteroid 65 million years ago. The ferret, there was something like a ferret-like animal, I believe, was about the largest mammal, and then we've arisen since from that point out into separate directions, left and right and forward. But some of these species hit a dead end, and some don't. Some of them are viable. The chimpanzee, the ape, the great apes are viable, but there aren't many primates.
That's true.
I'll
tell you something you can think about, disaster-wise. Mm-hmm. This is a good one. A lot of scientists now, Israeli scientists, really bright guys, think that it was not a big bolide that killed off all the dinosaurs. They think that the sun went through a cyclical time and through this immense radiation suddenly, and we now know stars do that. Every now and then, what is a stable star will throw this immense radiation and virtually sterilize every living thing on the planet.
Well, does that explain the iridium level? Because that's the...
It might.
Yeah. Well, I haven't read that at all. I'd love to read more about that.
Well, it could happen. And then in the blink of an eye, I mean, literally, instantly, all life would cease.
Yeah.
Microbial life, everything.
Would this allow for a good fossil record to be left? Because I don't know how the fossil record that we have matches that scenario as well as it might match the one.
Well, we might be future fuel.
Well,
whether we'd be anything more than that, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Fertilizer.
Listen, put me down for that one too, okay?
No.
Something. I don't mind. Whatever it is, if it destroys a lot of life, I'm a happy guy.
Well, look, there are a lot of environmental things going on right now that have that potential. I mean, the Antarctic is melting, the ice, seas would go up 20 feet.
Yeah, I forget if it's the eastern or the western ice shelf or whatever that might break off. If it does,
that's right.
It's wonderful because you have all new beachfront property.
About here, actually.
That's not bad.
Well,
no, I just think it's stimulating to entertain these possibilities, and I really don't understand people who run around wringing their hands and saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be awful? Oh, this is terrible." I think, hey, you're here for the ride. This is an adventure. I call it my entertainment. The file in my computer on all of this stuff is called my entertainment. Philosophers have said for I don't know, millennia, they've said, why are we here? And I'll tell you why I'm here. I'm here for the show. I want to see a good show while I'm here. And if it includes giving my life for the sake of entertainment, I'll go. I'll go. This is it's such a short-term deal.
Well, then you're about to be really happy, a happy camper, because I think between now and the spring of 2000, a lot of stuff is going to come down.
All right, now let me ask you to clarify, but first let me tell you what I'm wondering myself, because you're probably, and I'm sure you are, better informed on this issue than I.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I have a smattering of information and speculation from people who have have agendas, you know. My feeling is that probably a lot of the larger major systems, at least in this country, have been that the correction will take, or they will have fairly simple corrections to come down the line. But I think there would be a lot of random, you know, like the sewers will back up in one place, and the power will go out in another place, and this will overflow there, and that will go out here, and there will be randomized checkerboard patterns.
That's right.
And therefore somewhat chaotic, but maybe containable. I'm just wondering where that line is after which it really begins to send us back 100 years.
Well, I'll tell you where. If it would happen. Now, I don't know that it's going to, but we do know that there are hundreds of thousands of embedded chips. Now, that's not software.
Yeah, I know.
Embedded chips in power companies across America.
Right.
If the power were to go off for 2 weeks or a month, then at some point, irreversible things would begin to happen.
Well, sure, yeah. Embedded. Now, I understand the idea because there are embedded chips in cars and coffee makers, et cetera, et cetera. You're talking about major systems.
Yes, switching systems, power company things.
Now, the power companies have obviously done what they can about those non-embedded portions of the program.
That's correct, yeah, sure.
But you're saying that they're not telling us that there's a lot of stuff they just have to cross their fingers on.
Well, we know there is, and they know it too.
That's why they're buying generators, huh?
Well, listen, I've got a really nice generator here. And I didn't get worried until my power company came out and came in and said, listen, would you tell us, can we take a look at your generator system? We have a lot of customers asking about it. I said, sure. I said, let's trade a little bit of information. You tell me what kind of state you really think we're in. I want the real bottom line.
Right.
And what they told me was, well, we are prepared to leave the grid if we have to. If we see things going south, we will disconnect from the grid and provide local power for, I think he said, up to 6 weeks.
Wow.
And all power companies are bound, they sign something that swears they'll stay on the grid. But all the power companies really, they're going to take care of their local customers if things begin to go south.
Right.
Now, one little power company in Idaho went down a few years ago, and the whole western third of the U.S. and Canada and Mexico, they all went off.
Yeah.
So if one little power company can do that, what's going to happen if 10% of them fail?
Yeah. It's nice to consider. I'm not even prepared, Art. I have a few cans of spaghetti. We have a couple of books of matches, and we feel we're going to be okay. But I'm along for the ride, and if I die, hey, it's okay with me as long as things get really messed up. I just like the idea that I can turn. Well, maybe I can't turn on the news. I guess I got one of those wind-up radios you have.
Yeah.
And I can listen to that, and I can hear how bad it is. I don't care, Art. You see, I'm just a person who doesn't care about these things. I really don't care. I know that when things like an earthquake, like I say, when the amusement park ride is out of your control, you have to just hold on and enjoy the ride. And I know that is a possibility, as you say, between now and the spring. I'm just hoping that a lot of overseas, a lot of other countries get really chaotic.
They're going to get hammered.
Yeah.
I had a guy who called me who said that he's looking around at everything that's happening on Earth right now, environmentally, and every other way you can imagine, socially, of kids killing kids, all the rest of it. And he's saying, Mother Earth is mad, and she's going to do something. And I said, no, Mother Earth doesn't get mad; she gets even. And that's what I think. I think if things get out of balance, that there'll be a return to balance, and that return to balance might mean a 25.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but as you say, a 25 and we don't get to enjoy it. Maybe something like a 12 where we can enjoy it.
Well, I just wrote out a 7 here a few weeks ago, and I don't care to do that at all. It was horrible.
How far
is Pahrump? The hell out of me.
How far is Pahrump from Las Vegas?
65 miles west.
I didn't realize it was that far.
I can look to the east, and the entire sky is lit up with a glow of all the lights from Las Vegas.
Yeah, the light dome.
Yep.
Well, I'm over here under the light dome, Art. and I can see Jupiter. At least I can see Jupiter. That's my favorite object in the sky.
Well, you get 65 miles away from that city, and you will see stars. You'll see the Milky Way from one side all the way to the other side of the horizon.
Well, I drive home from here every time I leave here, and I leave here 4 or 5 times a year, and I drive back to Los Angeles, and I always stop a couple of times out in the middle of everywhere and take a good look. I do know about the names of about 65 stars. I have to be up to snuff on them. Sometimes I get a little rusty, and I probably drop down to 40 or so. But I love the sky. I call it my backyard. I think of it as something unchanging, that I can find it from Cleveland, I can find it from Manila, and it's regular and predictable, and I know my stars and I know my constellations. So I love it, and I know what you mean when you refer to that Milky Way.
Have you ever seen anything in that great sky that you cannot explain?
No, I'm a little disappointed in what we'll call the world of the paranormal or the extra normal, or whatever is a proper way to phrase it. I kind of root for and I wish for a sighting, a visitation, an experience of a ghost or an afterlife or a previous life or something. I've never had any of them. I have a fairly good intellect, and I'm very open to these things. I have my skepticism. I have that part. I do respect science and repeatable scientific experiments.
Are you really open to these things, though, or are you more of a control freak?
I'd have to say I don't know the answer to that.
In other words, if something happened, are you more likely to mentally reject it or embrace it?
Oh, no, I would be open to it. At least that's my opinion standing here now. I can't tell you what would happen under a given circumstance, but my feeling is, my knowledge of myself is such that I feel I would say, oh, please, look, come on down here, let's talk. Can I have a shirt like that? Let me have one of those funny hats. I mean, I'm being a little flip here, but I know that I am open and willing to experience some of this, because I think there is so much unexplained and so much potential beyond this limited human experience and this spectrum that we can perceive, this limited visual spectrum and audio spectrum that we perceive. I think there's just much more, and I wish my radar were better.
Do you think that it's more likely that we are a product of the God of the Bible we talked about earlier, or perhaps intervention by others?
Well, I think very strongly that is the probability. I think there's a leap, and I'm not up to this. I'm not up on this as much as I was at one time when my reading was a little more intense. But I think there's a gap. There's a leap in human intellectual attainment that is unexplained. And I do believe it is probable that we are a hybrid of some kind. The book, Sitkin's book of the 12th planet.
Sitchin, yes.
Yeah, I found that very stimulating and potentially believable.
Well, he postulates we were all a bunch of gold diggers.
Yes, that's right.
And that planet will come back, and you have to wonder what those who created with us would. I mean, look at California, for example. Now, this may be a little lighthearted, but when I was young, it was the coolest thing to go to California, and I did. I got up and I left and I went to California, and it was great. Today, when I go to California, I am appalled. I am absolutely appalled. I mean, what has happened to that golden state, that once great place to go to? It is regulated to death, taxed to death. It's a disaster. It's a social disaster. I mean, you can go and spend a little time in a lot of cities in California, and you can count the muzzle flashes, you know.
Yes, and it's just ugly. It's ugly to the eye, from the air, from the ground. There are too many humans to begin with everywhere. There are certainly too many of them packed into the population centers of California. I live in Southern California. The one thing I can say that I have good about my existence there is I live in Venice, down on those little canals, and I hear the ducks every night or in the middle of the morning, and at least I'm close to the ocean, and I'm a little bit away from the sound of traffic. And it's like a small oasis, but I agree with you, and I think it's true of most everywhere. Too many people, too much acquisition of goods, too many people hunting money and position and possessions. Everyone wants a salad shooter. Everyone wants a pair of sneakers with lights in them. Everyone wants a shirt with the number of some foolish basketball player on the back of it. And we've been bought off. We've been bought off with all these gadgets and toys. Two things I think that happened to this species that are irreversible and that destroyed us are the belief in a man in the sky, that's the sky god, as Gore Vidal calls him.
Yeah.
The belief in the sky god who keeps a scorecard on us and has a burning pit of hell for some of us. And the other is the pursuit of goods, commerce, rampant consumerism. The next HBO show I do is called The Great American Cattle Drive. But the American cattle are not being prepared for market in order to be sold. They're there for buying. They're there to do the buying. Get them to the mall. Get these suckers to the mall. Put them on the internet. Get them buying from e-commerce. Get them in the mall. It's just repulsive and disgusting, and it's one of the reasons I quit this species. It's one of the reasons I backed off and said, wait a minute, that's you over there, folks. This is me over here. I'll go my way, and if it costs me something, fine, I'll pay whatever price it is.
Well, you're rich. I mean, you could quit now and never work another day in your life, right?
Well, there's a caveat there.
Oh, really?
Well, I spent 20 years with the IRS trying to recover from a bad old tax bill that I had.
Really?
That got worse and worse with penalties and interest, and a little bit worse at the beginning of this cycle with adding. They disallowed a few other things that I had tried to claim, which weren't horrendously, they weren't really out of line. They were invested.
Millions and millions, huh?
But they were sufficient that with penalties and interest, I had a lien on my house for 20 years until I sold it about 6 months ago, and paid them off, and that's finally over. So I earn well. See, I've always had good earning power. I've been blessed with the ability. With the energy, I had a few heart attacks along the way, but that's the only thing. I've had energy and creativity, and I've grown in my art so that I can earn well, and I can continue to earn now, and I can save a little and keep a little of this money now. But I'm not sitting on a big pile somewhere.
So you're telling me you really couldn't quit right now? Well,
I could quit, but I wouldn't live the way I do now. It'll take me another 2 or 3 years and say, okay, everything's working for me.
Well, that's consumerism, George. George, hold on. We'll be right back.
This piece, advertising. Quality, value, style, service, selection, convenience, economy, savings, performance, experience, hospitality, low rates, friendly service, name brands, easy terms, affordable prices, money-back guarantee, free installation. Free admission, free appraisal, free alterations, free delivery, free estimates, free home trial, and free parking. No cash? No problem. No kidding. No fuss, no muss, no risk, no obligation, no red tape, no hidden charges, no down payment, no entry fee, no purchase necessary. No one will call on you. No payments or interest till December, and no parking. Limited time only, though, so act now, order today, send no money, offer good while supplies last, 2 to a customer, each item sold separately, batteries not included, mileage may vary. All sales are final, allow 6 weeks for delivery, some items not available, some assembly required, some restrictions may apply. Shop by mail, order by phone. Try it in your home, get one for your car. All entries become our property. Employees not eligible, entry fees not refundable. Local restrictions apply. Void where prohibited, except in Indiana. So come on in. Come on in for a free demonstration and a free consultation with our friendly professional staff. Our courteous and knowledgeable sales representatives will help you make a selection that's just right for you and just right for your budget. And say, don't forget to pick up your free gift. A classic, deluxe, custom, designer, luxury, prestige, high-quality, premium, select, gourmet pocket flashlight. And if you act now, we'll include an extra added free complimentary bonus gift, a classic, deluxe, custom, designer, luxury, prestige, high-quality, premium, select, gourmet, leather-style wallet with detachable keychain and a pencil holder. It's our way of saying thank you. And if you're not completely satisfied, you pay nothing. Simply return the unused portion for a full refund, no questions asked. It's our way of saying thank you. Keep your free gift. Actually, it's our way of saying bend over just a little further and let us stick this big dick into your ass a little bit deeper. You know, whenever you're exposed to advertising in this country, you realize all over again that America's leading industry is still the manufacture, distribution, packaging, and marketing of bullshit. High-quality bullshit, world-class designer bullshit, to be sure. Hospital-tested, clinically proven bullshit, but bullshit nonetheless. And it always amuses me that so many people seem to think that bullshit only comes from certain sources. You know, advertising, politicians, salesmen. Not true. Bullshit is everywhere. Bullshit is rampant. Parents are full of shit. Teachers are full of shit. Clergymen are full of shit. Law enforcement people are full of shit. The entire country is completely full of shit. In fact, this country was founded by a group of slave owners who told us that all men are created equal. That is what's known as being stunningly full of shit. And you know, I think, and I think people show their ignorance when they say they want politicians to be honest. What are these people talking about? If honesty were suddenly introduced into politics, it would throw everything off. The whole system would collapse. And I think deep down the American people know that. The American people like their bullshit out front, where they can get a good, strong whiff of it. That's why they re-elected Clinton. Listen, Clinton might be full of shit, but he lets you know it. Dole tried to hide it. I'm an honest man. Bullshit. Bullshit. People don't believe that shit. Clinton said, "Hi, I'm full of shit, and how do you like that?" And the people said, "At least he's honest. At least he's honest about being full of shit." It's like the business world. All businessmen are completely full of shit. Just the worst kind of people you could ever want to run into. Businessmen. And the proof of it is, they don't even trust each other. They don't trust each other. When a businessman is negotiating a deal, the first thing he does is to automatically assume that the other guy is a complete lying prick who's trying to fuck him on the deal. So he has to do everything he can to fuck the other guy a little bit harder and a little bit faster. And then, when it comes to dealing with customers, that's when you get the big smile. That's when you get the big smile. Businessman always has that big smile on his face as he carefully positions himself directly behind the customer and unzips his pants and services the account. We specialize in customer service. You heard that? Now you know what it means. Whoever coined the phrase, "let the buyer beware," was probably bleeding from the asshole. Then you have advertising. Advertising is the businessman's cheaply dressed $2 blowjob. Advertising sells you things you don't need and can't afford that are overpriced and don't work. And they do it by exploiting your fears and insecurities. And if you don't have any, they'll be glad to give you a few by showing you a nice picture of a woman with big tits. That's the essence of advertising. Big tits. Threateningly big tits. And speaking of big tits, what about show business? Show business, completely dishonest, corrupt, and full of shit, but in a nice way. Plenty of expensive drugs and perverted sex. If you're going to be full of shit, might as well enjoy your work. Then you have the media. Not just the news media, let's include them all. The media are almost literally exploding with bullshit because they're located right at the crossroads of all the other bullshit. The media are made up of equal parts advertising, politics, business, public relations, and show business. These people are sitting right at bullshit junction. There's enough bullshit in the media for Texas to open a branch office. And you still have enough left over to start 2 law firms and a Christian bookstore. Because, folks, I gotta tell you, when it comes to bullshit, truly major league bullshit, you have to stand back in awe of the all-time heavyweight champion of false promises and exaggerated claims, religion. Organized religion. It's no contest. Religion easily has the best bullshit story of all time. Think about it. Religion has convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a list of 10 specific things he doesn't want you to do. And if you do any of these things, he will send you to a special place of burning and fire and smoke and torture and anguish for you to live forever and suffer and burn and scream until the end of time. But he loves you. He loves you. He loves you, and he needs money. He always needs money. He's all-powerful, all-present, all-knowing, and all-wise. Just can't handle money. Religion takes in billions and billions of dollars. They pay no taxes, and somehow they always need money. You talk about a good bullshit story. If I may be permitted a small pun, holy shit. Holy
George
shit.
Carlin is here, and he'll be right back. So we'll get right to it. Now, here is, I'm sure, something positive we can talk about, George.
All right.
Somebody sends a fax, and they're really right. They say even the most cynical person frequently, and you're in that position now, would have some words to say about love. I mean, you're newly in love.
Yes.
And you're plunging, tumbling right into it again. And so you must feel pretty positive about that.
Well, the only things that I really believe in, because I don't believe in my country, I don't believe in religion and God and the institutions that man has made, I don't believe in commerce, but I believe in friendship, romantic love, and family, of course, which is bound into
Sure.
friendship. Yes, I believe heartily, and that goes back to my affection for individual existence and individuals and the life of the sole person. It's as I say, when they get into numbers larger than 4 or 5, even sometimes a group of 2
Yeah.
will alter how a person is. You heard a woman will say, well, Mike's not the same when he's with those guys. Or the guys will say, well, now that he's got married, he's a different guy.
Right.
People surrender something. That's why when a good love affair comes along, when a great love happens, it's because the 2 people don't have to surrender too much of themselves to make a new unit. And that's what I'm lucky enough to think I have found. And I agree with that fax sender.
All right. Now, on another subject, you were railing about consumerism. You said you got something coming up on that soon.
Right.
And yet, and you were talking about beautiful Venice. But Venice, California,
Yeah.
it's in California, and Venice is the very center of glitz, glamour, and consumerism. I mean, the very center in the world, if you had to pick a place other than maybe where you are right now.
You mean Venice, California, in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, Los Angeles generally.
Well, okay, fine. Now, that I agree to. I agree with. Let me point something out, and this might take me a minute or two.
All right.
I have often confronted it. Well, originally I confronted it for myself, but I've been confronted with the idea of when does one sell out? When have you sold out? And I have a problem with people who try to make that a black or white issue. To me, the idea of compromise or adjustment is on a scale. It's on a continuum. The purest person in the world would have to live in the woods and eat bark and make his own clothing to be truly pure. I mean, even Ted Kaczynski, who hated technology, used a typewriter to type his manifesto.
Absolutely.
And he rode buses, the interstate bus system, to go to a post office, to mail, the United States government, to mail his bombs, which were also a form of crude technology. And certainly no one would say, well, Ted's a sellout. So these things exist on a scale, a sliding scale, and each person must decide how much of an adjustment or compromise, if you will, they are going to make in order to do the thing that's important to them, in order to continue to be the person they want to be. And I have to sell tickets. I have to sell CDs. I have to be in the commercial world. I talked about my IRS problem. That's only because I earned big. So I'm not pure. I don't say that that's my scene. My scene is that I try to keep as much of my values intact as I can and still exist in this world and not be some sort of a martyr when everyone else is running around taking care of themselves.
Did you ever read Kaczynski's manifesto?
No, I started to, and
he actually had a lot of good points.
Well, of course. I happen to admire people like that, to tell you the truth. I know that the taking of human life to some people is not a good thing, but I don't think we've made human life very valuable in this culture we've evolved, and I think there's a place for people who decide to take lives in order to make a point.
Well, there's a lot of that going on. There was a guy on TV, and I can't remember the special I saw, but it was one of these LA gang members, and he looked right into the screen, and he said, "I don't give a damn whether I live or die."
Yeah.
So you can imagine how I feel about you.
Oh wow. Yeah. It's very, very true. I mean, this culture has degraded all of us to some degree or another, and all you can try to do is to cling to some little portions of yourself, and I mean self with a capital S, that are important and that define you, and let the rest just fly. That's why I take pleasure in the disasters and in the troubles. And let me say something about this, about the millennium thing, the Y2K, and what you spoke so directly to before. I think it's kind of wonderful that the arrogance of this species is what will bring it down. If it goes as badly as you say, and if it really sends us back several decades or centuries or whatever to some level of barbarism, I think it's kind of interesting and ironic and poetic and literary that the fact that we have this admiration for 000, for round numbers, and for a false calculation. Never mind that we're a year off because people are so ignorant that they think the millennium begins with the 2 and not ends with the 0.
Right.
But beyond that, this is all because a monk, as you know, you're aware of all of this, Dionysius, Dennis the Short was his name. In I think the 7th. Let me see. I have notes on this here. And let me get it exactly right. What happened was Dennis the Small, or Dennis the Little, Dionysius Exiguus, Dionysius the Short, he was commissioned by Pope John I in 525. He was a 6th century Scythian monk. He was told to standardize the liturgical calendar, and he did not include a year 0 between 1 BC and 1 AD. So on December 31st, we're welcoming in the last year of the preceding 1,000 years, not the new millennium. That's the obvious part. But on top of that, there is confusion about when Christ was born, because this is all based on one figure, his birth date, and Luke places the birth of Jesus while Quirinius was governor of Syria, which included Judea. But historians know that Quirinius was not appointed governor until AD 6 or AD 7. So they don't know if they're 4 years off, 6 years off, 7 years off. It's all a miscalculation. And if it really destroys civilization, it's a wonderful thing that an arrogant species can bring itself low. by its own calculations.
And even though it's wrong.
Hubris. Hubris.
Yeah, that would be something. And I think we're fully capable of it.
Oh, yeah.
So listen, censorship.
Yeah.
When you first started your career, I think the first album you had some kind of warning label on it. This record contains 7 words you can never say on television or radio, whatever it was.
Right.
Anyway, is there anything left today? Is there any censorship left today? Do you deal with that when you go on HBO? Are there things that they say, oh...
No.
Really?
No. First of all, I own all of my own record albums and masters. I have made 18 records. I own them all. And I own all my 12 HBO shows. I've had a very good, solid career that's sustained very well, and I own all of these things. I am an independent contractor, and I make a show. HBO gives me a little advance, or it's not so little, actually. And I make a show, and when I deliver that show, they give me the rest of the money, my profit.
Sure.
And it's a licensing thing, and then they run it for 18 times if they want, and then I keep it.
But they never say a word?
I have not, since 1977, when I began with them 12 shows ago, they have never said a word to me, and I swear to you that's the truth. And that's one of the things that saved me. I had an album career, and by the way, before I get off tonight, Art, I do want to plug my CD box set, and I'll tell you about that later.
All right.
But I had an album career in the 70s where I had 6 albums, and 4 of them went gold. You referred to one of them, the Class Clown album, had the 7 words you can never say on TV.
All right.
The next album after that, Occupation Fool, had a sequel called Filthy Words, and that's the one that went to the Supreme Court. I'm the only comedian who ever had one of his routines as the subject of a Supreme Court case. Mm-hmm. And in 1978, they decided 5-4 that those 7 words I said were indecent. It wasn't an obscenity case, but it was called, they created a whole new category of filth just for me. And I am perversely proud of that. I'm a footnote in American legal history. But I then, when my album career kind of, you can't be the hot new guy in town forever.
That's right.
So that kind of faded in 76, 77. And along came HBO, and I had another medium, such as albums are, where I was uninterrupted by commercials, and I was uncensored by someone looking over my shoulder. On an album, you put out whatever you want, and on an HBO show, I do whatever I want, and that took my career, which was in the middle of a crossroads, and really pushed it to a high status, and I've done 12 of those shows. I average one I've done 11. I keep thinking about the next one, but I've done 11 of them, and in 22 years now, I've done 11, and that's every 2 years.
How did you feel about the cross from doing albums to television? That's a big jump.
Well, all during my album career, and before that, when I had an earlier surge of popularity as a straight kind of a stand-up, suit and tie, short hair, I had a wonderful career in the 60s of being what you'd call a mainstream comedian. I did all the big variety shows. I did 25 Merv Griffins and about 30 Mike Douglases and 11 Ed Sullivans. So I had a career before my hair got long and I got more personal with my comedy. But I always did television, and all I ever wanted from TV, there are 2 ways I do television. One is to go on Letterman or go on The Leno Show, and in exchange for my coming on, just like any movie star or any, kind of a actress or a band leader, I come on and I give them a little marquee value, and they give me a chance to plug whatever I'm plugging. So that's one way of doing television. And in those cases, I don't try to change their rules. I'm not there to be controversial. I'm there for a commercial bargain I'm striking.
So you save the controversy for the albums or the HBOs?
Yeah, HBO is my real art, and I refer to it as art, even though that's your first name, Art. I know it sounds pretentious sometimes for a comedian to use the word art. It is entertainment first, but there's an artistic process on. It's a writing job, and you are interpreting the world through your own prism. So that's an artistic process, and I go to HBO just to show pictures of what I do. It's really essentially nothing but my theater act shown in your home. The same way a baseball game is. The baseball game, it happens in the stadium, but they show them at home unchanged. That's what I do for HBO.
Do people write stuff for you, or do you write?
Never.
Never?
40 years.
All your own stuff.
Only time I ever had anything written was when I would be on a variety show in the 60s, and they would write a sketch that I was in. Anything I ever uttered as my own has always been written by me. That's my pride.
Oh, yeah.
That I've written everything and that I don't need help. This is a self-contained unit.
Do you ever wonder, and I ask a lot of famous people about this, because Ted Turner once said on a Pinnacle show, I saw him, and he said, you know, having all this money, having everything, the CNN, the whole thing that I've got, he said, at the end of the day, it's all kind of an empty bag. That's what he said. It's kind of an empty bag. He's got so much money, so much everything. It doesn't mean much to him anymore. It's an empty bag.
Well, that sounds as if he doesn't get much joy from the process that he's in. Right. I'm assuming he didn't think to mention that part. No, I consider myself lucky and privileged to have been able to use my natural gifts in a way that satisfied me without, but doing it all on my own terms and being rewarded for it. Not just with money, but with this, that's the positive thing I was going to say a long time back. Here's what it is.
Yes?
I get to have, even though I was a kind of a lonesome kid, and I love my lonership, and I love being alone in the world, and Sally and I love being a little small unit separated from the rest. But you know something? When I go into an airport or a restaurant or a hotel lobby, I have people who say nice things to me, who say, I saw you in 1971, I saw you in 1965. Oh, my sister she loved you, she passed away last year, and she just had your book next to her. All of these strange stories about how you touched people's lives, and I think of it as an extended family for whom I don't have to buy Christmas gifts. They like me, I like them one at a time as I meet them, but it's a wonderful gift to have, and it's part of that paradox. Like I say, the cynic is really a disappointed idealist. Well, the loner is longing to belong to something. Somewhere in him there's the need to belong and be accepted, at least in my case. And I get a little of that. I get a lot of it.
But kind of afraid to at the same time, right?
Yes, that's right. I don't want to be ruled by the other, but I like knowing that I've touched them and that they care about me.
If we could have a one world something or another that would be, kind of like this country.
Workable and viable.
That'd be all right. But
you've
done a lot of travel. You've been to Russia, I bet. You've been to China. I've been to both those places fairly recently.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, they'd have shot you a long time ago.
Listen, this is the best thing we've come up with. I admit that. It's a grudging admittance because I like having my little attitudes, But I'm not dishonest. And this is the best we've done, the best we've come up with. I just wish that the ability to refine it and to make it better were more viable, were more available to us. It seems as though there are a lot of, and a lot of it is that money, that political money, the interest that control things, and that's the way it is. When they talk about conspiracies, and one of the things I enjoy on your show is when people talk about the government, and I'm talking about your guests who talk about whether or not the government and certain agencies and certain aspects of government have covered things up. And I have thought for a long time, not always obviously, but that, they've tried to make it so that the belief in the conspiracy makes you somehow outside the norm, that you're a kook, that you're a conspiracy buff. They say he's a conspiracy buff.
George, they lie their asses off.
I know it. And I wrote a little something out, and I want to read it to you because I pulled this paper up from the other room. I have some notes I haven't filed yet. And I said, well, if this comes up, I'd like to be able to say this to Art. So let me just read this to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it goes like this. Do I believe in conspiracies? Nah. Do I believe powerful people would get together and plan for certain outcomes? Nah. Do I believe powerful interests would operate outside the law and maybe even kill people? Nah. Do I believe secret government agencies might feel the need to assassinate a person and cover it up? Nah. I think everything in America is open and clean and above board, and powerful people always play by the rules. That's my thought.
Yeah, well, you should have been on my government agent line.
Oh.
I had a government agent line open earlier.
Really? Yeah. My biggest sadness is that I do go to sleep. Not my biggest sadness. Listen to this hyperbole. God, I gotta slap myself. One of my disappointments is that I don't get to hear you every night all the way through, and that I don't get to hear you every night. I do go to sleep a little bit early. Down here in Las Vegas, I do go to sleep late. but I'm usually writing at night and working on my computer.
Okay, then listen to me. Tomorrow night, have you ever heard of Ed Dames? He's a remote viewer. You know, we spent $20 million on a remote viewing program in the government. He was part of that.
You've had him on before, haven't you?
That's right. They call him Dr. Doom.
Okay.
And that's for good reason. Because, well, I'll tell you why. Hold on. We'll do a plug for you when we get back and do a final segment here. You promised me 2 hours, and we're certainly well into that. George Carlin is my guest. We'll be right back. That's right. Tomorrow night, by the way, Ed Dames will be here. Dr. Doom. And they are always wild programs. So if you're into pending disaster, you're going to want to be here tomorrow night. Believe me.
This is your one and only warning. Your screen will soon be filled with dramatized stories of scientific research that some people may find controversial and disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Ask yourself, there are questions that should not be asked. Experiments that should not be performed, or doors that should stay forever closed. In science, good or evil intentions do not guarantee outcome, no matter how or why it is obtained. Knowledge has a power of its own. May I present 3 stories of experimentation and unforeseen consequences.
Henry Molaison is not a well man. A childhood fall has damaged his brain irreparably.
Gotcha.
Well, what is it?
Let's do something.
The accident has left him with severe epilepsy.
Mike! Henry, come on, boy, don't do this.
By his late 20s, he's having over 10 fits a day.
Henry, come on.
He can't live alone, can't drive. The fits can take him at any time.
Mike, where are you?
The normal electrical activity of the brain occurs in regular patterns like this. But during a seizure, abnormal rhythms are established that wash across the brain using the brain's own communication lines. The net result is that the brain loses control of the body, and it can result in tonic-clonic seizures, short-term memory loss, and in some circumstances, even death.
Dr. William Beecher Scoville is an authority on brain disorders, but Henry Molaison has him stumped. He's tried every known epileptic drug, but nothing works.
Oh, Henry.
Brain science today is in its infancy, but in the 1950s, it had barely reached conception. There was a rough idea of what areas of the brain were responsible for which processes, but the ways they interacted or worked together weren't really known. In fact, most of what was known was only known because of people who had survived brain injuries. And so everything new that was attempted was a step in the dark.
Scoville is a charismatic, high-octane risk-taker. To help Molaison, he got a new and radical idea.
It's ruining my life, Doc.
I'd like to try something, Henry. Usually, when a brain short circuits like yours, we take out half a region called the hippocampus. Only your case is so severe, I'd like to take out the whole thing. Now, it's never been done before, but I've got a hunch it'll work.
It's thought that some epileptic seizures may be caused by an excess of the neurotransmitter glutamate in the brain. Now, when there's too much glutamate, an excess of calcium is released, and inside the brain, that can be very dangerous. Now, the hippocampus generates glutamate, and so removing it should decrease calcium levels and decrease the frequency of seizures.
I don't know, Doc. Sounds kind of risky.
Life is risk, Henry. And to be honest, with the life you have...
Bob.
got it loose.
Scoville was willing to perform this surgery because his patient was in desperate need. He had very uncontrolled epilepsy. He had very little quality of life. Still, he was playing a little bit fast and loose because he didn't know what the outcome would be.
Despite his uncertainty, Henry agrees to the surgery.
Cauterize.
Dr. Scoville burns out Henry's entire hippocampus. Time will tell if he is being bold or reckless.
In all new surgical procedures, there's an element of risk, but there's also a first time when it must be tried in a human patient. These days, we would review procedures like this through institutional review boards. But in Scoville's time, much more was left to the discretion of the surgeon.
After a few days, the signs are good.
Morning, Henry.
Hey, not a single fit, Doc.
Tremendous. Nothing for days now. Henry, this is Dr. Brenda Milner. She'll be doing some tests with you today.
It's a pleasure to meet you, man. Oh, and you're working with the best, you know? Doc Scoville is an ace.
Enjoy your breakfast, Henry.
Henry's epilepsy seems to be cured.
So what's the problem?
Just wait.
Dr. Scoville didn't know what the hippocampus really did. I mean, no one did. The operation was pure trial and error. What he did know was that less hippocampus meant fewer seizures.
Morning.
Hey, steady as a Chevy, Doc.
That's great.
Hi, I'm Henry. Pleasure to meet you, ma'am.
See what I mean?
Henry's operation has done more than affect his epilepsy. Henry's memories up to the operation are largely undamaged.
We went to Florida. Mom and Dad took turns driving. I had my head out the window listening to the engine the whole way down.
Good. Now, what do you remember about yesterday?
Well, now I think about it, not a lot.
But he cannot create new memories at all.
How about this morning?
You know, I don't remember it.
Henry? Can you tell me what you just had for lunch?
Henry Molaison is a tragic victim and a scientific miracle. Something has gone wrong with Henry Molaison's brain during radical surgery to treat his epilepsy.
Henry, this is Dr. Brenda Milner.
It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am. It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am. It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am. It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am.
Henry's memory is broken. But his condition could provide unique insights into the workings of the human brain.
We can experiment on the brains of mice all we want, but a mouse cannot tell us what it's thinking or feeling. So the uncomfortable truth is that Henry was a godsend to brain researchers. By looking at what he could or could not do, they could figure out how memory works.
Okay, Henry. I'd like you to remember the number 273. Can you do that?
Got it, yeah. 273.
Right. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Don't forget, 273.
Uh-huh.
The doctors are fascinated by what he can and can't recall.
And the number is?
273.
Right. How did you remember it?
I just kept thinking about it.
That's wonderful.
I'm sorry, have we met? I'm Henry Molaison.
So what can we say? Quarter an hour?
Henry's condition transforms our understanding of memory. Our immediate moment-to-moment impressions of the world are recorded in short-term memory.
1 hour it goes down to 90%.
But short-term memories are fleeting. To remain in the brain, they must be transferred into long-term memory, filed away for future recall.
We know, thanks to Henry now, that the hippocampus is crucial in the creation of new long-term memories. It takes memories of what's happening now and makes them into things that we can recall about last week, about last year. They're not stored in the hippocampus, but the hippocampus is very important in creating them.
Henry becomes the most famous patient in neuroscience, a man imprisoned in the present.
So tell me what you remember about your last fit.
But for Dr. Scoville, life moves on. He too must learn to forget.
Scoville's surgical procedure made him world famous, but we know from some of his colleagues that he felt guilty about the destruction that he had created. There is a cost to going first. It's a cost that someone has to bear.
Some people will work with Henry for over 40 years.
Good morning, I'm Dr. Milner.
Morning, ma'am.
Every morning, they will have to introduce themselves to him for the first time.
Wow, this looks real interesting. I'm Henry, by the way. Delighted to meet you. Where's Doc Scoville?
Well, I'd like to work with you today, if that's okay, Henry. I'm going to ask you to take a pencil, and I just want you to draw around the star as best as you can, okay?
Right.
And I'm going to take some notes, all right?
Tracing a line while watching your hand in a mirror is totally counterintuitive. Nobody can come to that task and get it right away. What it takes is practice.
Hi, I'm Dr. Milner.
Morning, ma'am.
You want to take a seat over here?
Henry has no idea he's tried this before.
Hello, I'm Henry Malazan.
Hi.
Well now, what have you got here?
His defective memory prevents him from remembering his many previous attempts. Yet each time, Henry's skill improves. It's as though his body remembers what his mind cannot.
Well, that was kind of easy.
Henry reveals that our understanding of memory is hopelessly simplistic.
There is not just one type of memory. There are at least two: procedural and declarative. Declarative memories are the things that you remember remembering, the places you've been, things you've said to people, things they've said to you.
We went to Florida.
But procedural memory allows us to accomplish tasks, physical ones like driving a car or riding a bike. Now, you can drive in a car and have a conversation with somebody, and when you reach your destination, you will remember the conversation. That's declarative memory. But you won't remember all of the thinking it took to operate the vehicle and successfully get to your destination, which is procedural memory.
Hello, I'm Henry.
Hi, Henry.
Once he's learned a new skill, even years later, Henry never forgets it.
Well now, what do you got here?
You could say that Henry's bad luck was our good luck. Through Henry, we learned about things like declarative and procedural memory, and we learned their importance in the fight against diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's disease. If you'd ever met Henry, he wouldn't remember you, but we'll never forget Henry's contribution to science.
Gotcha.
But every day, Henry wakes up pretty much the same 27-year-old man who had radical surgery.
Hello, Dr. Scoville. Hey, Doc, you in there?
He remembers his 27th birthday.
This place has really changed.
But not his 50th.
How do you do it so fast?
Or even his 70th.
So what's this?
The truth has to be hidden from him. His 27 years of memories are trapped in an old man's body.
Dr. Scoville! Hey, Doc!
Henry, you shouldn't be in here. No, come on. Don't worry. Come on, Henry. Come on. Come on. Now listen, Henry, don't worry. I promise. Tomorrow, it'll all be fine.
Okay.
Meet a man whose faith in God was so profound, he couldn't resist proving it with science. Do you need science to solve life's mysteries? Questions like, what happens after you die? Do you have an immortal soul? Is your faith enough to give you the answers you crave? Or do you need proof? Dr. Duncan McDougall believes that the soul exists. But to prove it, he'll need someone to die for him. McDougall has devised an experiment that requires a volunteer who will die on cue. But it's tough to convince people to take part. And his problems don't end once he's got past the front door.
The director says you can have 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
1 minute, 57 seconds.
My name is Dr. Duncan McDougall. And may I ask you, do you believe that our Lord made us in his image? Or are we, as many now say, just some kind of monkey?
The theory of evolution has got everyone spooked. The idea that we're all just hairless monkeys isn't going down well. McDougall plans to close this gap between religion and science.
In the 1900s, evolution was a very controversial idea in the United States because it removed man from the center of creation. McDougall set out to put man back.
What McDougall is thinking is, okay, is there a way to demonstrate that we are fundamentally different from these other animals? And one of the things that religion would say differentiates us is the existence of a soul.
I wish to prove scientifically that God gave us a soul. Please, let me explain.
That's
really quite ingenious.
That's enough now.
Nurse,
come on.
Please,
patient.
I can.
McDougall's plan is ingenious but troubling. He wants to weigh people at the moment of death.
McDougall wanted the soul, and the afterlife as well, in fact, to conform to the laws of science. The soul itself, if it's a body, if it's a thing, it must occupy space, and if it occupies space, it must have mass. According to scientists, therefore, if it has mass, it must have weight. How does this work out in terms of actually doing the experiment? Well, if the soul is a thing with mass and weight, when it leaves the body, quite simply, the body should get lighter.
McDougall needs people about to die from tuberculosis, or as it's known in the early 1900s, consumption.
Tuberculosis is a highly contagious infectious disease, and you most often see it present in the lungs. And you can see here from this set of human lungs, this darkened tissue, and that represents damage that the bacteria has done to the lungs. When the lungs become damaged, you're not going to be able to get the proper amount of oxygen into your lungs and then into the rest of your body.
People with tuberculosis tend to die quietly, and that was really important for his experiments because when you're taking very fine measurements, you don't want your subjects flailing about.
McDougall's persistence pays off. The colorless consumptive home finally agrees to take a leap of faith.
Good day.
Good day. Doctor, we'd like to help. My husband, would like to help you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
He has his first subject, patient 1. But most scales big enough to take a human are not sensitive enough to detect the tiny change he's expecting when the soul departs the body.
Most scales in the early industrial age, they were based on a spring. The spring moves as you pull on it, as the weight pulls on it. Our spring here, if I add a very large mass to it, will deflect substantially. Yet if I take a very small mass, add it to the same spring, there's really hardly a change that we can gauge with this.
McDougall takes his inspiration from a machine that weighs the finest of materials. A balanced lever arm works for silk, so why not for a soul?
A lever arm is actually the perfect solution. Here's a very large mass. We have it perfectly balanced with this other weight. If we go ahead and we add this very small mass to this large mass, you can see there's actually a substantial deflection on the lever arm. By gauging that deflection, you can tell someone exactly how much that mass was, that very small mass, when added to the large weight.
With his preparations in place, McDougall's moment is at hand. The man labeled Patient 1 is close to the end. All McDougall can do is watch and wait. And wait. If the lever arm on the scale drops when the patient dies, he will know weight has been lost. But it may not be that simple to decide when the patient is dead.
The major problem that McDougall was faced with in his experiments was describing when the point of death occurs. When is the threshold between life and death reached? Is it a pulse? Is it a heartbeat? Is it neural activity? These were all things that McDougall had to decide before he could determine what death was.
McDougall waits 3 hours and 40 minutes.
No! No!
Has he proved that the soul exists? Has McDougall used science to prove religion right? By weighing the body of a man as he dies, Dr. Duncan McDougall is attempting to prove what all good Christians know, that we humans have souls. At the moment of death, the body of patient 1 loses 3/4 of an ounce of weight. 21 grams. But McDougall needs more lives in the balance. A single result could always be dismissed as experimental error. He records a weight loss in his second and third patients. With his fourth patient, things don't go so well. Some believe what the doctor is doing is sacrilege.
Ah, doctor. I trust you won't be much longer.
The hospital staff famously interrupted McDougall's experiment, and it could well be there's quite powerful superstitious belief that actually the soul is being endangered rather than measured. And there were very powerful popular superstitions that the soul had to actually get out of the body at one level and it had to get out of the building at another level. So it's not unknown for people in McDougall's lifetime to be opening a hole in a roof, to be opening windows.
And that kind of superstition wrecks his fourth test.
Ma'am, I must protest. You have just ruined the experiment.
I'm so sorry.
The next death records a loss in weight of 3/8 of an ounce. McDougall now has 4 samples. All have lost weight. Has he measured his patient's departing souls? Or has he missed something?
Like any good scientist, McDougall then had to come up with alternative explanations for the weight that he had discovered in order to rule them out. The obvious option, of course, was the urine and the feces released by the subject upon death. But he argued that these weights were taken into account because they were on the bed with the patient at the time of death.
That's not the only variable. Could it be that he's just measuring the weight of their final breath?
He spent some time on the scale himself, breathing out really hard to see if that changed the way the scale registered, and it did not. So he accounted for those bits.
But McDougall's death watches don't sit well with the medical staff. Eventually, he's ejected from the home. He's forced to end his research.
Excuse me, nurse. I need my... Thank you.
Uncertain how to proceed, McDougall keeps his experiments secret for 6 years until, in 1907, the New York Times breaks the story. He's forced to publish.
When McDougall published his results, people kind of went crazy. A lot of people questioned his methodologies, but they couldn't really offer any alternatives to account for the 21 grams that were missing.
The Carlin consumptive home had been a lucky break for McDougall. No one else will give him a chance to continue his work. With humans, at least. McDougall moves on to a new area of research, aiming to prove that not only do we have a soul, but that it is a gift given only to humans. And his results are exactly as he might have expected. He finds that when dogs die on his scale, he records no weight loss.
McDougall, I think, found what he wanted and what a lot of Christians would have wanted out of these dog experiments, that when they died, there was no perceptible weight loss, so no souls in animals.
His results perfectly match the fundamental Christian belief that humans have souls, but animals don't. But is the underlying assumption behind his work flawed?
Embedded in McDougall's argument and in his experiment is the notion that the soul actually has a weight in the first place. Now, that's an assumption that he makes, which he then confirms with some experiments he does, but there's a really big logical flaw living at the bottom of what he was trying to do. We know of many things that exist but don't actually have mass, photons being the prime example. As my scientific hero Richard Feynman would say, the first principle of science is to not fool yourself, and you are the most easy person to fool. McDougall knew the answer he wanted to get, and he got it. What a surprise.
McDougall may have been trying to validate his own beliefs, yet the core question he asked still matters today.
What is the soul? What is consciousness? What makes us us? And this is a fundamental question, and one that's still at the heart of modern neuroscience.
McDougall's research remains controversial. Were his experiments flawed? Did he make a basic technical error? Or is there something more to it that we don't?
During the Vietnam War, America brought its entire industrial might to bear. Jet fighters, helicopter gunships, cluster bombs, napalm, and something else. When one man discovered that his agricultural research was being used to kill, he fought back against his own country. Not all victories are won on the battlefield. Arthur Galston has just taken a job at Caltech, where he meets Professor Lee Alvin Dubridge.
It's great to have you here. Thanks. So, I've been reading about this amazing boost in soybean production. That's your TIBA work, right?
It is. Great to see a lab rat's work having such a positive impact.
My friend, if you were a lab rat, we wouldn't have poached you from Yale.
Caltech wants Galston because of his revolutionary work on soybean production, which involves a chemical called auxin.
Auxin is a plant hormone that prevents the excessive flowering of a plant so that it does not grow too quickly at any one time.
He figured out that triiodobenzoic acid, or TIBA, had a truly remarkable effect.
TIBA is a chemical compound that Arthur Galston discovered which would prevent auxin from spreading in the plant.
This speeds the growth of soybeans, increasing the yield by 30%. But there's a downside to TIBA.
Stop. That's way too much. It's kind of counterintuitive, but too much is bad news.
An overdose of TIBA kills the plants. This aspect of Galston's research proves extremely interesting to another institution, the military.
What Galston had discovered, in effect, was one of the world's first defoliants. U.S. military officials instantly saw that this could have been extremely useful on the battlefield, and finally, by the 1960s in Vietnam, this was a perfect opportunity for defoliant operations.
The conflict in Vietnam presented the U.S. Army with a unique set of challenges.
The landscape of South Vietnam was very heavily covered by jungle, a lot of leaves, a lot of trees, and very hard to see. Visibility was in the 10 to 20 yard range, very easy to fall prey to ambushes. And so the U.S. Army began looking for a way to defoliate that jungle, to get rid of the leaves that were blocking their view.
Galston's peaceful research has become a weapon of war. Galston's star is still rising. Yale lures him back to Connecticut as a tenured professor.
Ever heard of Agent Orange?
Agent who?
It's a defoliant. They're using it in Vietnam.
Operation Ranch Hand.
Sounds an awful lot like your PhD research, doesn't it?
No. This can't be based on my TIBA research. That's never what I intended.
I guess worse. Read this bit.
Spraying the crops? No. No, they can't be using it on people's food. That's madness.
The U.S. Army very quickly began to use Agent Orange against the food supplies, both of the Viet Cong and of the neutral South Vietnamese tribes, as a way of forcing them into the big cities where they could be controlled by the Americans and the South Vietnamese.
Galston knows that at the concentrations needed for defoliation, these chemicals could be lethally toxic. Long-term effects are completely unknown.
The problem with the toxins is not just their short-term effects, but how long they last in the environment, and most importantly, where they end up in the human body. If they're in the bloodstream, then they get excreted out by the kidneys fairly quickly. But if they end up in the body fat, then they could last in humans for years, if not decades.
It's unbelievable. Crazy. It's supposed to feed people, not kill them.
Without meaning to, Galston has helped create a new type of chemical warfare. He has two options: go with it or fight his own government. he decides to use his position at one of America's most prestigious universities to organize the academic community against defoliants in Vietnam.
Lisa, Arthur, I'm calling about the petition. Well, they've at least got to test it. Yep, I'm sending it this week. Look, the thing is, we're clueless as to how damaging it'll be if this stuff works its way up the food chain.
The new defoliant becomes infamous as Agent Orange.
Agent Orange is called Agent Orange because it was stored in large 55-gallon drums with an orange label on them. It's as simple as that.
The U.S. military has expanded on Galston's research.
Galston discovered that TIBA, when sprayed in excess, would cause the plant to secrete another chemical called ethylene. Ethylene causes cell breakdown between the leaf and the plant, which is called abscission. When the leaf on the plant falls off, no photosynthesis can take place, and therefore, of course, the plant dies.
But Galston's work on ethylene could be taken to a whole different level.
The US military, they found that two completely different chemicals were much more effective, and these were called 2,4-D, which is 2,4-dichlorophenoliacetic acid, and a second one called 2,4,5-T, which is 2,4,5-trichlorophenoliacetic acid, that are both synthetic auxins, were much, much more effective at causing defoliation.
Eventually, Galston's campaigning gained some traction. His petition forces the Army to test Agent Orange. What they discover will confirm his worst. 1969.
Thank you.
Arthur Galston's campaign against Agent Orange goes up a notch when he manages to arrange a secret meeting with his old professor from Caltech.
When I found out, I couldn't believe it. I figured someone would have done something.
Lee Alvin DuBridge now moves in higher circles, science advisor to the new president, Richard Nixon.
I just don't think Agent Orange is the way to do it.
Listen, Art, the military view is you take away Agent Orange, they're gonna hit the enemy with more bombs instead.
Well, that plan sure didn't come from a scientist. Look, when I came up with TIBA, they made sure it was safe, it was analyzed, it went through lab tests and formal protocols.
Art, I know this. This is how we do science.
This is how we do science. We test again. How many tests do you think they did in Agent Orange before deployment that aren't to do with how well it kills plants?
How many?
None. Zip. Zero. And we know that a lot of chemicals turn out to be nastier than we expected. Look at the thalidomide disaster.
Art, this is a herbicide. It is not a drug.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe it'll turn out to be both. Until we test it, we're in the dark, and that's a bad place for science to be.
Art, Orange is not TIBA. Why does this matter to you so much?
My TIBA research was the inspiration behind Agent Orange, and that's as sorry a use of the word inspiration as I've ever heard. Without me, maybe no one would ever have got started on this kind of defoliation. It's a crime against science, Professor. It's a crime against nature. Hell, it's just a crime.
Okay. I hear you. I'll see what I can do.
In April 1970, under advice from Lee DuBridge, President Nixon orders a temporary halt on the use of Agent Orange in Vietnam. Galston travels to Vietnam to see the effects of Agent Orange firsthand.
Between 1965 and 1970, the U.S. used about 11 million gallons of the agent.
Hello?
Enough to defoliate half the state of Maine.
This had profound consequences.
My name is Arthur Galston. I'm with the university. I need to know what happened. And the people?
Without me, maybe no one would ever have got started on this kind of defoliation.
One of the compounds in Agent Orange was a chemical called 2,4,5-T, which turned out to be teratogenic. A teratogen is a compound that causes developmental abnormalities in fetuses. So it can cause all sorts of physical malformations, such as cleft palate, limb deformations, and very often can result in stillbirth.
In some areas of Vietnam, stillbirths increased by almost 50%. Birth defects by 300%.
It was kind of odd for an academic biologist to press U.S. policy, but he did, because he was insistent that what the government was doing was wrong and that science should always be put for good purposes. This culminated in Senate hearings where he lobbied Congress to end defoliant operations in Vietnam, which he was successful in doing, thereby making him and his colleagues one of the few political activists ever to change government policy in a time of war.
In 1971, confronted with overwhelming evidence, the military finally agreed to a permanent ban on the use of Agent Orange. But children, damaged by its effects, are still being born today. Is this the place where science crosses the line? Is this the moment when good intentions become evil doings? Sometimes our experiments lead us to the shadows. But how far is too far? Join me and see what happens when science gives in to the dark.
Dark Matters, twisted but true. A new season starts Thursday, the 1st of November on Discovery Science.
Question everything.
All right, here we go again. And George, I know you do have something coming out, something new, something people can get soon. What is it?
Yeah, and by the way, this makes a wonderful first communion gift.
Oh?
Yes. Now, this is the box set. The albums I talked about earlier from the 1970s, we took all 6 of them and put them in a CD box set.
Oh, my God.
And not many comedians have a box set, I'm happy to say. This is all 6 albums from the 70s, plus a bonus album. You got to have a bonus, Art.
Sure.
Got to have a free extra added complimentary bonus gift album for no cost to you. This is 70 minutes of things no one has ever heard of mine, so it's like a new album within the box set.
Oh, my.
All stuff from that era that didn't make the albums then, because at that time the LPs only accommodated about 45 minutes of spoken word.
That's right.
So we always had some things I had to leave out, and it always bothered me, but I've taken them all, put them together, put them in the bonus CD. And here's the really interesting part, because, a box set is a fan's purchase. This is not a general consumer item. People don't go spend $80 on a comedian's box set. But if they're fans, if they're really crazed, they care about these things. And in this bonus CD, on it, are some recordings I made as a child before tape recorders were very common. In fact, they were only sold in showrooms at the time, not even in consumer stores. I was lucky enough, my mother bought me a tape recorder when I graduated from grammar school in 1951, but it was as big as a Buick, Art.
So you were how old?
I was, at that time, 14, just turned 14.
So this is material from when you were 14?
It's before that. It's when I was 12, because before I had my tape recorder, I had to go to those little booths. Remember those little booths?
Yep.
In the arcades, you put in a quarter, and for a minute they'd record your voice, and they'd give you a little acetate record.
That's right. Oh, yes, I remember.
Well, I made 8 of them when I was about 12 years old, and I've kept them all these years, and we put them on this CD. And it's got my, it's just like hearing a prototype of what I wound up doing later. It's all these little routines and comedy impressions and newscasts and sports things. And you can hear my old New York accent. I say, "Good evening, this is George Carlin with the news." And it warms my heart, and I think a fan might be interested in it. There are 6 of those little records on there.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, and so the album, it's just my box set. They don't have to know the name of it. It happens to be called The Little David Years, but asking for it by my name is enough. And I just want people who care about my stuff, because I know those fans exist, to have access to this. And like I say, a wonderful first communion gift.
Yeah, right. All right, so these are available like in record stores,
Yeah,
or is there an 800 number or something?
No, they're available. Atlantic Records has been my distributor forever. My label is called Eardrum, but I'm distributed by Atlantic Records, and this is in all the stores.
All right. So it's there now.
Yes, it
Already
is.
there now.
Yeah.
That's quite a project. So really, you always knew, or you were always who you are now. You're just sort of a progression of what you were.
That's right. When I was 11 years old in 5th grade, they said we wrote little autobiographies. I think 11 is a good year for that. And the last page was, what do you want to be? You know, what about your future? And I still know mine. I still have it, actually. I have the little piece of paper. It says, I want to be an actor, comedian, impersonator, disc jockey, radio announcer, or trumpet player. I always knew what I wanted, and I planned my life when I was about 14 or 15. I planned how I would go about it. I'd become a disc jockey, and then that would get me into comedy.
Is that what you did?
You mean, did I follow the plan?
Yeah, in other words, did you become a disc jockey?
Yes, I got into disc jockeying when I was 19. I was in the Air Force down in Shreveport, Louisiana. I was on the #1 station in a 9-station market. I had a 52 share, Art.
52 share?
A 52 share in a 9-station market.
That's really incredible.
And I was 19 years old. It was a daytime station, 1,000 watts. It was called KJOE, KJO in Shreveport. And being a daytime station, we had to get our listeners back again every morning, you know. They wander away at night.
That's right.
So it was a good station, and I had a very lucky childhood. I got to plan my own life and live it out, and I consider myself a very lucky man. And I've worked hard for it, too, but that's genetic. You know, working hard is not something you decide. It's something that comes to you because you kind of feel like you ought to do it.
I always knew, too, exactly what I was going to do. Radio all the way, and it's been that all my life. But there are so many people out there who are, I don't know, they have no idea what they want to do.
Yeah.
You talk to the kids, and I don't know.
Well, they don't have an overriding interest or an overriding talent or an overriding goal or art form that, you know, kind of drives them, something that takes over.
I was going to say drive. Oh,
yeah, something that takes you over and says, this is it, buddy.
It actually, it's almost like it's a drive that's almost more than drive. It's a madness almost.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with genetics. I mean, I honestly think they're finding out, of course, the more they map this human genome and start to isolate some of these genes, and some of it's oversimplified, I know. But I think they're finding, and I've always said that it's mostly genetic. There's a good amount of environmental. I mean, there's a lot of nurture, but boy, nature is really in charge.
How old do you say you were? 60?
I'm now 62. I'll be 63 in May.
You know, I have the world's experts at longevity on the program, doctors, and they are telling me, honestly, if you can hang on for another 30 years, there's every probability we can give you immortality.
Well, I know about some of those projections. I don't know them as, you know, in such a detailed fashion as I'm sure you do. But
you're kind of on the edge here.
It's funny that you say 30 years because I have predicted for myself to live to 94.
Really?
Yes, I've always said that's my goal, and I know that the brain, I learned something as a teenager, that the brain, I read a book called God, now I can't think of the name of it. Isn't that great?
Doesn't matter.
Psychocybernetics. And it said that the brain is a goal-seeking, problem-solving mechanism, and if you put in a problem and a goal, the brain will do everything it can to get there. So I put 94 years in there once because my uncle, or great-uncle, Uncle Martin, he was 94, and he was doing push-ups in my kitchen when I was a kid. And I said, 94 sounds good. And I know the kind of work that people like Linus Pauling and Philip Johnson and a number of other people have done in their 90s. And as long as I have my faculties, I expect to have this kind of energy and drive and stamina until then. And boy, it'd be nice if they came and give me that immortality.
Yeah, but they really aren't. They're not just talking about immortality. They're talking about taking you back to your prime and stopping the aging process.
Wow. Well, look.
I don't know if that'd be good, actually.
Well, I know, but you know what? It'd be worth an experiment.
Well, if you were one of the ones.
They could be alternative. Right?
That's right.
Boom.
All right, look, I do have a radio show. Can I put a couple of callers on with you?
Oh, I'd love that. And by the way, I have a website called GeorgeCarlin.com. It's a really nice, well-engineered website, and again, I speak mostly to fans. I'm not trying to sell myself to the general public. I have a nice little percentage of the population that likes me, and I want them to know I have a great website called GeorgeCarlin.com.
Well, if we don't have a link, we will within minutes.
Oh, thank you.
All right. First-time caller line, you're on the air with George Carlin. Hello.
Yeah, hello, George.
How are you?
I have two questions, if I may.
What's your name, sir?
Where am I? Los Angeles?
No, I mean your name, sir.
Oh, Zan.
Zan.
Short for Alexander.
Okay, Zan. Nice to talk to you.
Sometimes they say it's an old Martian name, but...
Doesn't sound bad to me.
Yeah, well, the question is, have you read, I know you're talking about we being a product of some accident. Have you read books by, like, Darwin's Black Box by a biologist who believes that idea of random evolution is not scientifically viable?
You mean the combination of punctuated equilibrium and natural selection is not viable, the whole Darwinian combination?
Yeah, well, yeah, the idea of the process of it being accidental.
Oh.
You know.
Well, no, sir, obviously I haven't read it, and I admit to being poorly read. I'm usually wasting my time writing rather than reading. But I will have a tape of this show, and I will have a reference. I can write it down at another time and look for it. I do enjoy that sort of reading.
Well, he just wanted to sort of infect you with the possibility that it's not all random, that there really is the God that you talk about that isn't there.
But is he judgmental?
Well, we didn't get that far with him, but okay. I would say there'd be a strong possibility of it, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's implied. So Zan is gone already. Okay.
Wildcard line, you're on the air with George Carlin and Art Bell. Good morning.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning to both of you guys.
Hi, where are you, sir?
I am in Michigan, and my name is Joe.
Hi, Joe.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah, I figured I'd call in and ask you what you thought about all basically the horrors in U.S. history, blue laws, everything that restricts personal liberty, the government killing people, basically the bad side of U.S. history that's never really exposed to a great deal to the mass public.
Well, I'm sympathetic to what you're saying, and my own knowledge of it goes so far as maybe to have read some Howard Zinn and to have read some of that part of history. I've often said when they talk about, there are people who say that we've had a loss of civility in this country, that there's been this breakdown in manners and civility. And I say, well, what civility would that be? Would that be the genocide of the Indians? Would that be slavery? Would that be the Hiroshima or the Nagasaki civility? Which civility do we mean? I think this country has a lot to answer for. A lot to answer for.
Tuskegee.
Pardon me?
Tuskegee.
Yes. Well, you can go on and on.
Hazel O'Leary, our own energy secretary, walking out incredibly just a couple of years ago and saying we fed plutonium to kids and pregnant women and stuff like that.
Oh, and these stories are legion. I mean, the list is getting longer and longer. And if you just think about the labor violence in the 1930s, in the name of commerce, in the name of big business, it is a terrible, blotted record. And I have always said, when people revere the flag, I've always said, you have to look at that flag for everything it stands for, not just what you perceive to be heroic and perhaps good things, but everything it's ever stood for. And the record is more than just mixed.
Well, yeah, it is. And, I remember when I was young, and I'm not that much younger than you are, I remember when the Federal Bureau of Investigation would come out, and they'd come on television, it'd be like, we've caught so-and-so. It was like the word of gold. I mean, the FBI came on, man, you believed every word they said. Today, if the FBI says something, you almost automatically disbelieve it.
Absolutely. I think it is a good thing. There are people who decry this, that this loss of trust in our leaders, in our government. Well, the record is there, and I think it's a good thing. And if it's going to require some bloodshed someday to get it right, because I honestly believe, you know what I like about assassination art? It shoots the hell out of those popularity polls. Those polls, he's up to 70% now. All of a sudden, bing, he's not even in the poll anymore. And I'm not telling people to go out and do that, but I'm telling you, when I see that, and we're way behind India even. India has killed 3 Gandhis, and we've only killed 2 Kennedys.
Israel's been busy?
It's exciting to me. I just love that punctuation in history when it happens.
Well, they warned me. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with George Carlin. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, who have I got here?
Who do you suppose?
Or I don't know.
Well, who are you calling?
No, I'm George.
Oh, no, I meant the call. Oh, the caller is gone. We somehow lost the caller. That's too bad.
Somebody just picked him off.
Yeah, that's right. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with George Carlin and Art Bell. Hi.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
I'm calling from L.A., Max.
Hi, Max. How are you doing? I'm George.
Little Yuppieville suburb. But the comment I had was, it's kind of weird the way humans think with, profanity and everything. Doesn't really make any sense. Like, a teacher had one time brought up a good point, like, if you switch the words crap and red, then it'd be perfectly fine to say, yeah, could you hand me that crap pen? But you say, yeah, I really got to take a red. The teacher yells at you.
Right.
That's right. Yes, that is right.
Well, the thing about words is that they're arbitrary designations, and they freeze meaning. They don't allow for nuance or any sort of spectrum, and that's one of the difficulties and limitations of language. And then when you add religious superstition and fear, guilt, and shame of the human body, this is what religion has done to us in this area of obscenity. It has taken the human body, its functions concerning sex, and as it happens, excretory procedures, and assigned to it an evil, bad attitude. I'm sorry, I'm not being too articulate about this.
Yes, you are.
I'm trying to rush. But it has to do with superstition. It is not reality. The two most uncompromising forces in human experience are going to the bathroom and having sex.
Yep.
And these are the two things that are obscene. Not the taking of human life, but these two things are considered obscene, and these are the most irrepressible forces in nature.
That's what Howard Stern gets in trouble for.
Well, Howard
talking about that stuff.
Yeah, I know, but he does it. You know, he has to be kind of cute. Show us your breast.
That's true. That's true. He's on radio, and he got in a lot of trouble. I mean, a lot of stations he was on got fined, and he went through hell.
Well,
kind of like you.
My case was the one that established that. Those 7 dirty words became a Supreme Court case because a radio station played my record on the air in 1973. And in 78, the Supreme Court decided 5-4 these words were indecent when played on the radio.
Did the radio station keep its license?
It was, yes, it did. It did. It was WBAI. It was not a commercial station. It was a listener-supported station.
Ah. And they kept their license. So
they kept their license.
Yeah, that really is a big victory, actually.
Yeah, and it's funny, they'll just they'll just define it any way they want to get what they need, what they think they need. But it's so absurd. I mean, I just read Newsweek, and it's got a story about John McCain, and it says how he said F blank 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 Y blank blank blank. Now there it is in plain black and white. They didn't say the 2 words, but it's clear what they meant, and every reader was intended to know what they meant.
Of course.
So apparently knowing what he said wouldn't hurt you or corrupt you morally.
But actually hearing it.
But to print the actual letters would somehow violate something. This is how simple-minded and how thin this philosophy is of censoring. And other places probably wouldn't say the F blank blank blank. They just say blank or expletive. And there's no real standard for this. It's all haphazard, and it's all based on religious fear, guilt, and superstition.
In the general media, is that ever going to change? In our lifetimes, maybe that's a better question, is that ever going to change? Is the world going to just open up?
Well, there is erosion. I mean, Newsweek would not have even put that much in there 10 years ago, or certainly 20 years ago. So there's a certain erosion that takes place. But, no, I can tell you a 10-letter and a 12-letter one that they'll never print, unless it's a magazine with a smaller circulation that doesn't depend so much on mass advertising. It all has to do with earning the buck. Yeah.
Money.
Yeah, not offending a buyer.
Well, you're very good at behaving yourself, aren't you? In other words, you can either be George, the HBO George, or the record album George, or you can be the George under control, even doing stuff for kids. You do some stuff for kids.
I did a show on on PBS. I did 45 episodes. I took the place of Ringo Starr. In that respect, I'm kind of the anti-Pete Best. A very inside rock joke. the anti-Pete Best. But I played a character called Mr. Conductor, and it was a sweet, well-produced and well-written children's show. It was not a kind of a garbage show, and I took a lot of pride in that. I did it because it gave me a chance to act a little in a manner where other people might not see that side of me. You know, this thing I do is all about self-expression, you know, kind of like exposing yourself to people and showing who you are. And this gave me a chance to show that I have another side, that I have another quality to me that perhaps they didn't think about.
Oh, you obviously do.
Sure, we all do. We all have many facets, and that's what I tell. Sometimes when I did that show, people would say, "Well, how can you do that?" And I'd say, "Well, use it as a learning tool for your child to show them that people have more than one facet. People are not all monochromatic. They have different aspects to them, and I have this aspect as well as the one, you know, the profane one."
But you can walk that line so well. I guess that's just a part of being good at what you do. Have you seen the movie The Sixth Sense yet?
Yeah, no, you know something? I watched it in a hotel and fell asleep in the middle of it. Not because it was bad, but because it was late. But I know the movie that you're talking about.
Well, being a skeptic of the paranormal, I would suggest that movie to you at a moment when you can stay awake. Look, it has been, boy, has it been fun having you on the air. You promised 2 hours, and that's exactly what you have given me is 2 hours.
Well, thank you. I really thank you for the chance to be myself and to show my flaws and weaknesses and to show some of my strengths and to tell you the things I feel. And I do love your show, and I hope you do it forever and ever.
Thank you, George.
Thanks.
Good night, my friend.
Bye-bye.
That's George Carlin, as promised. Great guy from Bally's. And now I guess he can kind of wind down a little bit. You do that after a performance. You know, the adrenaline is flowing, and there's no way that you're going to go directly to sleep. So it's kind of like a racehorse. You've got to kind of walk it off. And that's what he just did. He kind of walked it off. Now maybe he'll get some sleep. Good night, George. From the high desert, I'm Art Bell, and this